Another blood-red sunset and yet another moon phase, and still another 100 miles to my next resting place. Driving down the road, eyes on the horizon. Within my car, I'm all alone, but feeling good and feeling strong, knowing that this path I'm on brings me to myself. I'm driving.
You know all, I'm Joey C. Welcome back to another episode of Spirit Sherpa. This is the show that helps and encourages you on your journey to unlock your magic mojo. With me, as always, is the Spirit Doctor, Kelle Sparta. Hey, Kelle.
Hey, Joey.
How's it going?
Good. You like my new background?
I was just going to say, now for those on the audio podcast, they can't see this, but when it gets out on video, they're going to see that you've got a new background.
I do. It's the koi pond in the Japanese garden at Maymont Park in Richmond.
Nice. Excellent. Now, a little bit of foreshadowing, because this episode may come out on the air before the video comes out, depending on how...
Oh, it's definitely going to come out before the video comes out.
Depending on how the release structure for video goes. But what Kelle and I have started doing on the videos is putting backgrounds behind us so that we don't have to clean up our rooms.
Yay!
So like there could be a party going on behind me, literally, and nobody would know. It's all hidden by...
As long as it's a quiet party, yes.
Yeah, it could be a quiet party. Yeah. We'll turn the gain down on the microphone really low. We'll be okay.
Yeah. We
have an episode that I have no idea what we're going to be talking about. The only thing I know about bypasses is that there's a surgery where you can bypass the heart. There's a roadway called a bypass, I think, which goes around something. So what exactly is a spiritual bypass? What are we talking about, Kelle?
So spiritual bypass is a term that's been bandied about recently in the last, 5-10 years. And it's meant to be a reference to how people who want to be spiritual but don't want to do the work to be spiritual just pretend to be spiritual.
I see.
And I don't mean that they don't even really know that they're pretending.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're trying to fake it till they make it.
Go through the motions.
Well, it's an affirmation fallacy.
Okay.
For instance, the idea that if I am always positive all the time, my life will always be good.
Okay.
And that's not true. No one can always be positive all the time.
Right.
And if you're always positive all the time, it's because you're pretending not to be negative, and then your shadows will come and eat you. Okay. So if you've ever seen JP's Ultra Spiritual,
yep,
he is the classic example on that show of spiritual bypass.
Okay.
I'm so very spiritual. Why aren't you as spiritual as me? I'm better than you. That's the classic spiritual bypass.
Okay.
Right? Look at me. I'm so much more spiritual than you. Aren't I awesome?
Yep.
That is such an ego statement. It's not even funny. And it is a classic, no. Right? And I want to be really clear. I'm not dissing these people.
Okay.
I'm not. They are honestly trying to find a path. And the path that they've chosen is the path of self-delusion.
Okay.
And it sucks for them because they don't even know that they're doing something that's going to damage them. Mm-hmm. They're trying really, really hard. Really hard. It's like, well, I'll just find the good in it. I'll just find the good in it. I'll just find the good in it. And yes, you want to find the good in things, but you also don't want to ignore your feelings. Stuffing your feelings is never a path to spiritual enlightenment. Your feelings are your feelings.
Right.
And you have to deal with what they are. And if they're not what you want them to be, stuffing them or ignoring them or denying them is not the way to change them. It's a way to, over time, make yourself crazy. So I see this a lot in spiritual venues where, people get into this work because they're looking for a solution.
Right.
They're looking for a solution. They're not happy. Nobody gets into spirituality because they're happy. Okay. Everybody comes in because they're not happy and they're looking for some way to be happy.
Right.
And so, they've been told, oh, just do this affirmation and just think positively and, oh, just, it'll be fine and you can just manifest it all. And on some level, those things work, but not if that's all you do. Right.
Because you're not changing the underlying structure, your foundational elements. You're just you're following the recipe. You're not actually cooking.
You're trying to just put a film over yourself of spirituality and hope that just sort of eventually sinks into your being. And it doesn't work that way.
Right.
Right. And so I always get frustrated when I hear people who are brand new starting to spout. One of my biggest pet peeves is affirmations.
Okay.
It's like, because, while an affirmation is helpful when you're doing other work, it is actively damaging if you're doing it as your work.
Okay. But affirmations in general can be, like you said, can be helpful things. They're focus elements to remind you of the work that you're doing. Reminding yourself of the work you're doing and what you're focused on is helpful as long as you're not using that as the crutch that I've done my affirmation, I'm done. I don't need to do anything else, because that's not what it's about.
Exactly. I tend to use the word mantra more than affirmation.
Okay.
And the reason that I use mantra is because it is more of affirmation just screams white light and bunnies to me.
Okay.
It's like, and mantra seems more grounded, but the point being that so for instance, let's say you get panic attacks, right? And the thought is, what if something goes horribly wrong? That's usually how a panic attack starts, is what if, right?
Down the rabbit hole you go.
Right, down the rabbit hole. And so a mantra or an affirmation that I would use in that scenario is the opposite of whatever the what if is. So the what if that would take you down the rabbit hole, you go, well, what if it's not that? What if that doesn't happen? And that's a mantra that you can use. Well, what if this happens? What if it doesn't?
Right.
And then the part of you going, goes, what? Right? Well, what if it doesn't?
Yeah.
Well, you're assuming bad things happen. What if I assume good things happen?
Right. In that case, it's a short circuit mantra to short circuit
the short
spiral.
circuit mantra. Yes. Typically what happens is that people grab an affirmation and they use it to try and live into it. And oftentimes even the affirmation itself is badly written.
Okay.
Let's say, for instance, you used an affirmation that was, I am now financially free.
I see.
Right? How many people, when they're financially free, walk around saying, I am now financially free? Nobody.
Right.
Nobody who has enough money to pay for everything they want and doesn't have debt and whatever walks around going, I am now financially free. It's not something that you would actually say in that scenario. And that's what an affirmation is meant to be, is a statement of who you're going to be when you get to that place.
Right.
And so you got to actually think about it from that perspective, because you're setting an intention based on that. The only people who say I am now financially free are people who have debt and who are poor.
Right.
And the hopes that it's going to go away, because it's a statement of things that have passed. And this is the problem with affirmation. It's more of a statement of, I am fiscally responsible.
Okay.
That would be something you can live into today.
Right.
Right? The problem with affirmations is that they're often set in the future, or they're set in unreality, and your mind goes, yeah, right.
Yeah, in both cases, it's not real.
Right. And so, if you're not fiscally responsible yet, then you say, I am choosing to be fiscally responsible.
Yeah. Okay.
Today, I choose to be fiscally responsible.
Okay.
Right.
Yep.
And to make that decision. Right. So this is the problem with affirmations.
Right.
It's so easy to screw them up. Right. And I've seen even affirmation books that have screwed up affirmations in them. So just because you borrowed it from somebody else doesn't mean it's good. Right. Affirmations are so often a part of spiritual bypass.
Okay.
Is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And so if your ego gets a bump from how you perceive yourself spiritually, then you're probably doing it wrong.
Okay.
Okay.
That's kind of the opposite of what you're trying to do there.
Right. Because if it's an ego-based thing, if you're going, ooh, look at me, I'm so awesome at this, and blah, 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 well, then that is not what you're going for.
Right.
Okay. That is the antithesis of what you're going for. Right.
Okay.
And so this is what spiritual bypass is about. And when one of the biggest ways I see this happen in ritual context is when people have a releasing fire, right? And so they'll often have these big bonfires, and it's time for you to let go of that which has passed and which you no longer need.
Right.
And inevitably, I see people try and spiritual bypass at these events. And what they'll do is they'll write down something that they don't freaking like about themselves, that they don't like about their lives, and they don't want to deal with, and they'll throw it into the fire in the hopes that it'll go away.
Right.
And for those of us who are energetically aware, I watch them throw it into the fire. They walk up to the fire, they throw it into the fire, they walk away, and the thing comes flying back and smacks them in the back. I'm like, yeah, that didn't work.
Because they never let go of it.
Well, because they weren't done with it. A releasing fire is meant to be a place that you put things that you're done with.
Right.
It's a place of acknowledging of completion.
Yep.
Not of throwing away that which you don't want.
Right.
It's a completely different concept. And people use it the wrong way all the time.
Yeah.
This is another classic example of spiritual bypass. It's like, oh, here, fire, you eat this. I don't want it.
Right.
Right? It's like, well, but it's yours. You manifested it. It's in your life for a reason. And if you want it gone, you need to deal with it. That's how that goes. And, here, I'm going to spit it back at you.
Yeah.
It's just, the fire's not going to take it if you're not actually done with it.
Right. And this goes to something along the lines of what we talked about in the episode that you told us about soul retrievals, and that's that element of integration. So if there's something in your life that you haven't integrated, you can't necessarily just push it away once it's there. You have to integrate.
Yeah. Well, and, there's a really good use for releasing fires. Releasing fires have a purpose, you know. It's a great way to release the mourning process once, oftentimes you'll have memorials a year after the person dies.
Yep.
And that's the time of acknowledging and releasing the mourning process, saying, okay, it's time to come back to life.
Yeah.
And so that's a releasing ritual of its own. It's a completion ritual, right? Yep. But, if you just pretend, and mourning is a great, grief is a great way to look at this. Mm-hmm. If you just pretend to be okay.
Yeah.
And you don't acknowledge your feelings, one day you're going to be watching a Hallmark commercial and you'll be in a puddle on the floor. Right. It's just Lifetime movie, Toast, right? Yep. It's just it doesn't make it go away to pretend that it's not there.
Okay.
So, if you are hearing yourself in this description, there's nothing wrong with that. I just want to say that there's nothing wrong with it. And it's not going to get you where you want to go.
Right.
Okay. So, the thing that you want to think about in transitioning is you have to acknowledge, if you want to get out of spiritual bypass, if you are someone who's been living here, you have to recognize that spiritual bypass is a denial process.
Okay.
It is a denial that you are in pain. It is a denial that you are unhappy. It is a denial that there's stuff you have to look at, and you're trying to skip the hard stuff and go straight to the end. Mm-hmm. And the problem with that is that the hard stuff is what gets you to the end. Right. I see this all the time too with people who are trying to leave their bodies. They have one connection into the spiritual realm and they go, oh my God, I love this. And they try to live halfway out of their body the whole time, completely forgetting that, they enlisted to be here on the planet. And that's its own version of spiritual bypass is the unwillingness to be present to the physical realities of life.
It sounds to me also that one of the interesting elements of the extreme case that you're talking about, the I'm so spiritual, look at me, I'm living in an enlightened space, blah, 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 is actually the opposite of what spirituality can allow you to do, which is live as a more complete human in a lot of cases is the ability to see yourself and around you more. And if you're just living halfway out of your body, you're not actually also experiencing the 3D aspect of why you're here.
Right. And, the people who do that, some of them are doing it consciously. And I've asked them.
Yeah.
And they say, well, I don't want to live in 3D reality. It's too painful.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, if you lived in 3D reality, it might not be so painful.
Right.
Because when you're halfway out of your body, you can't deal with the fact that you can't pay your rent.
Right.
You won't be able to pay your rent if you're living halfway out of your body because you're not engaged enough in the physical world to make it a priority to pay your rent.
Right.
Kathy talks about back in the day, 20 years ago, she talks about the people who would go to pagan festivals and they'd show up and say, yeah, had to quit my job. They wouldn't give me a week off to come to the festival.
Then you don't go to the festival.
Well, yeah, but no, that's not how some people are doing it. This is what I'm saying with the, if you're not living in physical reality, you will make those choices.
Right. And we actually, when we talked to Brenda, when we did her listener profile, she talked about her sort of stage where she was so angered at being embodied. She was uncomfortable and frustrated with being embodied. And it was that shift for her to be happy in her body that sort of started to change her perspective and change things for her. And that's similar to that sort of bypassed element that you're talking about, is people who knowingly are like, no, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be embodied. And it's until they embrace the wholeness of it that It allows them to really become on the path they're walking.
Well, we are the circuit between the earth and the sky.
Right.
And so if we don't complete the circuit by being actually in the body, then life doesn't go well.
Boom. Boom. And there you have it.
And there you have it.
Well, this has been a lot. Spiritual bypass is a lot like heart bypass, except what you're bypassing in this case is the physicality of
and the
emotions and the reality of it. You're sort of just wearing the robes, but not necessarily understanding why you're wearing the robes. Yeah,
you're trying to surf life instead of root in.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been fun. And
you say that every time we do something that's deep and dark.
I know, because my brain melts a little bit more, and it oozes out my ears here, and I'm like, okay, I am now all fuzzy. But I do think we've learned a lot today, and I think this has been great. And again, as always, folks, if you have questions, pop in the Facebook group, the Spirit Sherpa Podcast After Party Facebook group, and that's where you can throw some of those questions out there, ask Kelle things, interact with the folks around us.
Yeah, there's only like 55 people in that group right now, so there aren't that many people in there. So there's a lot of opportunity to talk to me and Joey and the people who have been guests on the group, because that 55 people includes them.
Yeah, and there's a lot of content that's getting posted into that group as well.
Yeah,
so
a lot of stuff getting posted in there. Yeah.
Good stuff. Subscribe and rate, as always, and share the podcast with your friends and family in all the ways that you can. And lastly, KelleSparta.com. Go there, check out what's going on the website. Cool stuff, discovery sessions, mailing lists, all the funness, all the happiness. Get, go, gone. All right. Anything you would like to say before we finish the episode? I'm not going to do this whole Kelly's dying thing again. It's going to be humming Beatles with Paul McCartney's Paul is dead kind of thing.
Paul is dead. Paul is dead.
Exactly. Kelle is alive. She's in the koi pond if you're watching this on video. And is there anything you would like to say to wrap up the episode?
Be kind to yourself.
Okay.
If this is if this has resonated with you, if this is something that you see in yourself, don't beat yourself up. Every bit of self-judgment and self-recrimination that you do is actually counterproductive to your spiritual evolution process. Right. So be kind to yourself.
And you weren't, as you said before, you weren't faulting these people or tearing them down. You were just saying that this is a state that often happens, and just be aware. Just be aware that it exists.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, that's all that we have for this week, but be sure to join us next time as Kelle adds another chapter into your guide to energy, magic, and the spirit world. I'm Joey C. here with Kelle Sparta, and you have been listening to Spirit Sherpa. So long, everyone.
Bye.
Each mile I travel over 13,000 now. I leave behind a little fear.
Spirit Sherpa is the sole property of Kelle Sparta Enterprises and is distributed under Creative Commons BY-NC-ND 4.0 license. For more information about this licensing, please go to creativecommons.org. Any requests for deviations to this licensing should be sent to KELLE@KELLESPARTA.com. That's Kelly@KelleSparta.com. To sign up or to get more information on the programs, offerings, and services referenced in this episode, please go to KelleSparta.com. This episode of Spirit Sherpa has been produced by Honu Voice Productions.